I really wanted to like this movie. I really did, and yet it has a lot of problems, and I don't know if I'm going to make this a contrarian review or if I'm going to make this, a rotten review because I haven't really made up my mind yet. I think I'm going to make up my mind during the course of this episode of Rotten Reviews, but let's get right into it. I'm going to take a look at the 2018 film The Mule, and it stars Clint Eastwood, Lawrence Fishburne, Michael Pena, Bradley Cooper, and others, Andy Garcia. There are quite a number of named actors in this, recognizable actors and actresses, and some cameo appearances in some weird places I wasn't expecting. And yet, however, I just can't make up my mind whether this deserves to be rotten. Now, Rotten Tomatoes, it has it at a 70% on the tomato meter. It has it at 66% on the audience score. Yet, I see a very small number of user reviews. I see only 3,843 user reviews. So, like me, I think a lot of people actually didn't know or they were unaware of this movie when it was released. They're probably still unaware of this film. I only saw this because it showed up on HBO like in the last few days, and I was just unaware of its existence. Now, this was released in the theater in 2018. I don't have a number. Rotten Tomatoes isn't supplying a box office gross for that. I'm not going to bother digging into that. I'm just going to probably conclude out of the small number of user ratings that this wasn't very popular in the theater. It just kind of became a forgotten about film. Is it rotten? I don't know. See, that's the thing. I just haven't been able to make up my mind on that. I think it's disappointing. It's disappointing that Clint Eastwood, he had everything here and it should have worked. It's kind of a redemption story for his character that he plays, this mule, this old man that's got, a troubled family history, and he wants to redeem himself. He wants to undo things that have happened in the past that have made him kind of an outsider with his family. The problem is, the story never really gives you that deliverance. It never delivers that redemption. It goes in quite a few weird places that don't help it along to get to a point of redemption. It diverts, almost like Eastwood was distracted with the story, and he veered off course and then veered back on course a few times. What I mean by that is that you don't get exactly a redemption of his character, although the movie's set up to deliver it, and you almost are promised some sort of parallel redemption of a drug cartel character, but it never delivers that either. It just proves to be a distraction or a diversion, and I can't really understand what happened here. I'm not saying that I didn't enjoy the film. I certainly watched the entire thing. I was wrapped up in it the entire time, but it just didn't deliver what it seemed to promise at the beginning, and that's very unfortunate for a Clint Eastwood movie. I would have thought with his experience that he would have like taken this to the exact destination it was supposed to reach, but he didn't. Somehow something happened along the way. But let's get right into the audience reviews and find out what other people think. This is Rotten Reviews, so I'm not going to look at 5 and 4-star reviews. I'm looking at 3-star and only reviews, 3-star and below. So let's move down, and we have one from 2 days ago, 3 stars. It was all right, kind of slow at times. Okay, yeah, it was a little bit slow at times, but it needed to be slow at those times. I didn't find that to be a problem. Let's move on before I start showing you my nitpicks on this. Half a star, December 21, 2019, making it about, a week ago. Half a star. This is the worst movie I've seen in a decade. Any positive reviews for this movie make no sense. The only awards this movie should receive is for worst writing, worst directing, worst music, and worst acting. Wow, they really hated this thing. I don't agree on that. If I had to give this a star review, I would give it 2 stars. I'm thinking 2 stars right now. Could it go higher, lower? I haven't made up my mind exactly on that, but I say it feels like a 2-star movie. I sat through the whole thing. I wasn't bored outright. I didn't find anything offensively bad. The acting was all fine, although I found it strange that so many big name stars showed up in this in the roles that they did, and there were a couple of cameos that a lot of people might have missed, but I'm surprised that was there too, and I was expecting more, that this would end up more than just a two-star thing. But let's move on. 3 stars, December 21, 2019. Not sure what to say about this one. It's not great, but it's far from bad. It's kind of just there. The story is good, but you don't ever really get too deep into any of the characters and their backstory. I think it could have done with another interaction between Eastwood and Cooper's characters, which I think would have given a little more depth to both of their characters' background and loose connection as far as putting work before family. Yeah, the movie, it really does promise you that it's going to deliver a theme. The theme is that the family is more important than anything else. The family is more important than work. The family is more important than money. And when you become old, you'll appreciate that. And that's what this film felt like going all the way through. That's the message it wanted to deliver. But it diverted too far off into other things and lost the chance to really deliver that message at the end. It kind of lost the plot, so to speak. And I just don't understand why. Like, for example, it had plenty of running time and had plenty of opportunities to show us why Clint Eastwood was estranged from his family. Why did his daughter kind of not want anything to do with him? And why was his granddaughter so offensively, why was she so fighting her family to defend him and defend his reputation? And yet she didn't really give him the benefit of the doubt much either. And his ex-wife, treated him really cruelly in a lot of emotional ways. And the film, okay, that's fine, but the film didn't show you why that was and make that believable. Like, why did he deserve to be treated that way by these family members? All the film really tells you is that he was an absent father of some type, but there are plenty of fathers that are, somewhat categorized as absent fathers, but they don't deserve all the shit he was getting from the family. It just didn't make a whole lot of sense. On one hand, the family wanted him to be there, and then it has another message. It's kind of also at the same time showing you characters that are outright telling him that they don't want him to be there. And you don't get any backstory, you don't get flashbacks, you don't get a sense of why this came to be, so it doesn't feel completely real. It just feels like he's just been made the outcast of his family and he wants to change that. But how can you have a redemption if you don't understand how we got to that point? It's not believable enough. And particularly his ex-wife, sometimes she treated him like she didn't want anything to do with him, that she shouldn't be there for his daughter or granddaughter. And then at other times, she was upset that he wasn't there more. It's like a schizophrenic way of doing it, and I never really understood what it was that he did that was so bad that he deserved the situation he was in regards to these family members treating him this way. And that's a big fail, because this story needed that above and beyond anything else that might have been going on. That had to be there, and it just wasn't there. And that's why I just say it's disappointing. And there was no true redemption either, because the character ended up actually atoning for all the bad choices he made, but nowhere did he end up redeemed, really. I mean, he didn't have any further wisdom at the end that he had at the beginning. All the way through, he said that he believed that family was more important than everything else. All the way through. So nothing changed that opinion. He still believed it at the end. And he ended up in a position that didn't make him see anything differently, like he didn't have a character arc. It's just very disappointing, and particularly on Clint Eastwood's directing, because he's not known for making mistakes like this in movies. But let's move on. 1 star, December 2019. Spoilers included. It starts with a racist joke. Not a great start. Internet, wow. So you hate modern tech that makes our life easier. I love Clint Eastwood's films, but this is so right-wing, more so than usual. Like Gran Torino was a fairly right-wing movie. That said, it prided hard work. It told the story of a man who has been through many hardships and brings a young immigrant man up from depression. It was a great film that coveted friendship and honor. This reviewer is all over the place. Not exactly. I don't agree with any of this, because Clint Eastwood's character is like an old man. He's a product of a different time. And yes, it kind of drives home that fact by showing his interaction with black people and showing his interaction with Hispanics as being of somebody that in the modern day would be considered a throwback, not somebody that would be very socially accepted in these views that he has. But that's not the point of the movie. You can tell that's just Eastwood trying to characterize what type of guy this is. That's fine, but that's not the fail. The fail is that it doesn't actually have him redeemed. It doesn't have him making a transformation. He stays at the end just like he was at the beginning, and he's not a bad guy either. He's not a bad guy. He's just a guy making all the wrong choices for the right reasons. It's very strange. It's like you see where the movie's trying to go, but it never quite goes there, and it diverts. Like this reviewer is saying that Eastwood like brings a young immigrant man up from depression. Well, no, he didn't. He kind of became friendly with some drug cartel gang members, and he actually tried to tell, he gave advice to a cartel member that he should walk away from the cartel and do other things because they don't really care about him. You know, it tried to go there, but it didn't. It was just, it proved to be a diversion, and the story just completely forgot about that and went somewhere else. So I don't get what happened. If you told me that 2 or 3 people were directing this, then I would have understood what happened, and I would have said, okay, that's why it lost focus, that's why it diverted into this other stuff. But no, it's just Clint Eastwood's the only director listed. That's why I'm so confused about this, because it's like he got schizophrenic or lost in what he was doing and diverted. And, you know, there's some stuff thrown in here that doesn't make a whole lot of sense for the theme. Like, Eastwood actually goes to a party thrown by this drug lord character, and at the party, it really has to show you all the, all the kept whores that the drug lord has, and it really makes a visual point on that. And Clint Eastwood having sex with the girls, and later it has Eastwood in a hotel room deciding to call up a couple of prostitutes, and it doesn't really go anywhere with that. It just kind of makes his character more seedy and more unwise and maybe a little bit more irredeemable, but it never uses it in the film. It just proves as a distraction, and a visual distraction at that. I mean, it's like Eastwood became really distracted. I don't know. Is he losing his his logical, coherent mind, so to speak, to put it nicely? I don't know. But he's the only one on the director's credits, and it's like it diverted into all these other weird things and didn't do anything with those things. But still, I'm not saying this is a completely bad movie. I kept watching it, certainly. I'm not going to read 4 and 5-star reviews because I don't believe them in the first place. It's not all that. 3 stars, November 20, 2019. Not English. And there was Spanish in the movie, by the way, but not enough that you didn't know what was going on, just enough to make the cartel members a little more believable. 2 stars, November 20, 2019. It's almost like Dirty Harry turned 88 and drives around in his truck, oblivious to what's actually going on. He drives, gets a bunch of money, then spends it. And of course, he's still trying to act like a badass, a skinny, old, pants up to his chest badass. And then there's a touching scene that proves he's really a good guy. I was told it was good. I was told wrong. Yes, some of that's up to your interpretation, but my interpretation was it wasn't that he was a badass. It's just that when you have an old skinny guy like that, no, people don't beat up old skinny guys, really, at least unless they want to really be villains. Yeah, he talked tough to drug cartel members, but if I was involved in the drug business, and I'm used to young, strong people like myself coming up to me and threatening me, and then the skinny old man comes up to me and talks tough to me. One, it's going to be kind of off-putting. I might find it humorous. And two, am I really going to beat him up over that? I mean, do I take his threat seriously? No, so why would I need to punch him up or do something to him to prove that he's intimidated me? So I get it. I get this is just he gets away with acting like he is because he's an old man. I mean, that's what I took from it. This reviewer's trying to take a whole lot more from that somehow he's supposed to be this big tough guy, but I didn't see it that way at all. I just saw it as kind of making him more pathetic. He's an old guy that the only reason he gets away with acting tough and talking tough is because he's this old, frail guy. Yeah, it's, there is a scene, well, there's a few scenes that show Clint Eastwood spending money on good causes. He gets this cartel drug money for being a drug mule, and he's very easy to part with it and, use it on somewhat good causes to help other people. But at the same time, it shows him just doing it because he just doesn't know what else to do. So he's kind of like the reluctant, he's doing things in a good way, but he's doing it in a reluctant way, like he just doesn't know what else to do with the money. And so that's also working against his redemption. Like, you're supposed to deliver him into a position that we see him being redeemed or not redeemed, but we don't get that. It's kind of wishy-washy. Yeah, he does good things, but it doesn't show that he's doing that because he knows they're the good things. He just does it because he's afraid his family will ostracize him and his friends will ostracize him. He won't be part of the club, so that's really why he's doing the good things. And he ends up in prison, and he's a flower farmer. He spent his whole life obsessed over these flowers, and when he ends up in prison, he kind of is back to tending the flowers in a prison garden. And that's not really saying anything. Like, it's like he never changed. So again, he has no character arc. So I don't get, if there was a message there, I just don't get it. It's like the movie just kind of lost the plot, so to speak. Half a star, November 18, 2019. This film is terrible, very slow, very boring. Cliche characters, Andre truly childlike dialogue. Eastwood is transcending his own shortcomings as a family man with this movie, but why he had to bring us along on this really poor and long-winded apology is beyond me. If anything, it's arrogant and counterproductive. Movies took you away from your family, so now you make another movie to apologize. Come on, man. This reviewer thinks this is Eastwood trying to, like, send a message to his family that he spent too much time in Hollywood filmmaking and he neglected his family. I don't know about all that, but I don't know about the history of Clint Eastwood other than he's an actor and I've seen a lot of his films. So I don't have a pro or con on that, but it's not a half a star movie. This is 2 stars. It's worth watching, if anything, just to find out, was there a message here? It kind of makes me wonder if there was something that I'm missing. And I'm also at the same time wondering if maybe Clint Eastwood's mind is just not like all that it was before, because he got confused, for lack of a better word. 3 stars, November 2019. Today I will be taking a look at The Mule, which is the 37th film Clint Eastwood has directed. The dude is 88 years old. Walking into this movie, I thought I would be getting a classic gritty Eastwood performance where he is the biggest badass on the screen. However, within the opening minutes of the movie, you learn that he is not that guy. His character Earl Stone dances, he sings, and he has no problem getting after it with the ladies. He likes to tell racist jokes and tends to enjoy his life. While this is a long-winded plot summary, that was one unrealistic part of this I found, was that they're showing him having sex with all these prostitutes, and the prostitutes walk away looking satisfied and all this, and it's like, that's not really believable. I mean, if he were 40 something, sure, but he's like 88 years old and he looks like an 88-year-old or even older in this film, and yet he has no problems having sex with all these prostitutes, and they're having no problem with him. And, the movie doesn't need to show that. I mean, prostitutes do what they do for the money. Everybody knows this, but the movie actually shows them coming away satisfied from him out of the hotel room. I mean, that's a little bit over the top, really. Again, it's not played for comedy or anything like that. This is a completely serious movie, but it just has these weird diversions like this that I don't know what to make of it, what Eastwood was thinking it was supposed to tell us. Half a star, so overrated. Just because a movie is directed by Clint Eastwood, it doesn't mean it is good. It is quite the opposite. It is unoriginal. I already saw this story in many other movies. It is cliched. It is predictable. The performances are boring as the entire too long movie. The soundtrack is poor, and it doesn't even have any thrilling scenes. What a disappointment. I can kind of agree with all that, As much as I say it's still a 2-star film, I can see the point of everything they're saying in that review. There is nothing original here. It's been done many times before. Yeah, everything that I just read in that review is pretty much spot on, although I wouldn't say it's half a star because of all that. 1 star, October 28, 2019. Such stereotypes, predictable, not fresh dialogue, some really bad. Wanted it to get over with. Well, I'll say the drug lord was a very bad stereotype. Andy Garcia's drug lord. I think Andy Garcia's done that same role many, many, many times before, too. He's almost a stereotype of himself as a drug lord, along with all the scantily clad prostitutes that have to be around the drug lord. How many movies and TV shows have we seen that? In fact, some of those actual scantily clad ladies were playing themselves in other more recent productions in the same roles, believe it or not. That's how crazy that is. I recognize them. But yeah, I don't know. It's just stereotypes up the ass. If this had actually delivered a working redemption story, and if this had delivered, like, somehow there had been that parallel redemption story with the almost likable cartel member that's sent to be his minder, then this would have worked. It would have been fantastic. But it kind of tries to tease like it's going to do that type of stuff, and then it just kind of forgets about it and meanders off into other stuff. So it didn't work. 2 stars, pretty cliche-ridden, predictable tale. Clint is past his prime, and the story is rather lame. Yeah, I can't disagree with that, really. I can't make a big disagreement with that. Again, I'm still sticking with 2 stars. I'm leaning towards maybe this deserves to go into rotten territory. Maybe this should be a 59%. But we'll see. 1.5 star, October 14, 2019. Total crap. Eastwood shows his aged view of racism, sexism, and his acting has become a caricature of the man himself. Just look at Million Dollar Baby and Gran Torino for further evidence of that. Well, yeah, Clint Eastwood he was really great back in the 60s and 70s, playing like, very very mean, grumpy, emotionless, vindictive, tough guys. That's what he was known for in westerns, spaghetti westerns, Dirty Harry movies. And now he's kind of fallen into the rut that he's very good at playing a grumpy old man, a get off my lawn type of man. But that's not the real flaw in this. You're kind of expecting that from Clint Eastwood, just like you were expecting his stereotype performance in Dirty Harry, when you watched one of those films. The flaw here is that the film teases that it's going to deliver a redemption story, and it doesn't. It has all the elements, but it forgets where it's going, and it has all the star power it could want, and it forgets to utilize them to get the story going like that. Let's move on. 2.5 stars, October 13, 2019. Once again, old man Eastwood is back at it in the lead role, leading a life where he just doesn't understand the new generation. This time, he's around a drug mule, hence the title, which makes for some interesting and very awkward scenes. I feel like this was trying to recapture some of that same magic Gran Torino had, but I just wasn't really feeling it here. Eastwood does fine, I suppose. The supporting cast is decent as well. Still, this gets a meh. Yeah, I'll largely agree with that. It made the drug cartel members, especially the lower level ones, almost likable guys. And it's like I thought that the movie was going to go there. It was going to have him somehow redeeming them or something. And it never really did. They just stayed in the background as somewhat likable cartel members, even though, they're bad guys. They've killed people and they would not hesitate to do it again if they were ordered to do so. But it's just like Eastwood tried to make them likable, and I'm not sure where he was going with that because it didn't go anywhere with that. It was kind of disappointing. 3 stars, October 4, 2019. It was headed in the right direction until the ending. It's like they skipped a scene. Spoiler alert, in the last scene, where did all the blood come from? If that's supposed to insinuate that an 89-year-old farmer took out 2 armed gang members with his bare hands, that's something I need to see. Yeah, that was a big hole, and that was on my list. In the end, it's shown that he's having a confrontation where two cartel members are, they're going to kill him after they let him deliver his drugs. But then later, it cuts to Eastwood driving, and he's on his way to deliver the drugs, and there's blood all over his face. And it wasn't shown them beating him up, and he doesn't look beat up, but he's got blood all over his face, and I don't know if they're saying that he did something to them and it was cut from the film. I got the impression that maybe that was a scene that was cut from the film, and he did actually take them out somehow as a really old man, and maybe on second look, Eastwood cut that from the film because it didn't look realistic or something. But yeah, it doesn't explain why he's covered with blood at the end. And Bradley Cooper's DEA agent asks him if he's all right or what happened to him, and he just gives kind of a cryptic answer. He doesn't explain what happened to him. It really did feel like a scene that was cut out of the film. And let's see what's on my list as far as other problems. I mentioned most of it. The film spent time like trying to give us some kind of anti-police message or something. It's shown where DEA agents, played by Bradley Cooper and Michael Pena, they are looking for a black pickup truck that fits a description that Eastwood is driving as a drug mule. So they pull over black pickups all over stretches of highways, and they spend a lot of time showing them pulling over people that are the wrong people. And in one scene, they pull over this guy that kind of meets the description of somebody that could be a drug mule for a Mexican cartel, like a stereotype of one. And he's shown as a very nervous, very scared guy that thinks the police are going to do something to him. And he keeps repeating that he's so much more likely to be killed at this police stop than anywhere else. And that's why he's so scared. And it's kind of weird and cringy the way he keeps saying that to the DEA agents. And the DEA agents make a big point of checking his ID and all that. And then they let him go. And there's definitely a message there. The movie's trying to give you some kind of anti-cop message or something, and it doesn't quite deliver it, and the movie kind of forgets about it after that. It's, again, one of these things the movie diverts into, and then it just like forgets all about it and just moves on. I don't know what was going on there, but definitely they were trying to give us some kind of message, but it failed. The wife is really cruel, but they don't explain why she's like that. And then at a later point in the movie, she's kind of like forgiven him or something, but you never get a sense of why she felt like he was such a bad guy and was a bad husband and all this. It just doesn't give us enough to make that believable. So then we have there's a really big problem here. When Clint Eastwood is sentenced to prison, there's a scene in the courtroom where he's sentenced to prison because he pleads guilty against the advice of his lawyer. And the daughter stands up and makes a joke saying, and I quote, "At least we'll always know where you are." But she's saying it with a smile on her face, and it's meant to be in a lighthearted way. She's actually making this as a joke in the courtroom when her dad has been sentenced to prison. She's saying, "At least we'll always know where you are." And she's smiling while she says it, and it's like done as a joke. And it was so weird, and it just took me out of the whole scene, and I'm thinking, what was that supposed to be? I mean, everything's all serious. The family is all sympathetic to Eastwood. They want him to be acquitted. They're there with his lawyer. And that kind of felt weird, too, because it's the same family that shunned him all this time before. All of a sudden, they're there at his trial, and they're all rooting for him, and they're all, on the verge of shedding tears and whatnot. And then the one daughter just cracks that joke after he's been sentenced to prison. Very, very strange. It just threw me out of the whole scene. That's probably the biggest flaw in this whole thing that just stands out as a plot problem. Um, yeah, I just consider this a wasted opportunity with a really long running time. It had the running time to make everything work, to give us everything we needed, to see this great redemption story on this character, and it just squandered the time, diverting all over the place into other things that were also just forgotten about in the end. But I'm going to finish up this page of reviews. 1 star, October 2019. Interesting to watch. Expected something to happen at the end, but nothing happened at all, so a complete waste of time. Clint Eastwood's character is way too respectful of the drug cartel murderers, which, combined with the lack of any significant events of conclusion, really makes me hate the movie. I kind of agree with that, except I was looking at it from my point of view. Eastwood was treating the drug cartel members good because he came across as somebody that didn't exactly know what was going on. Like he was out of his league, he was out of his element. he was just treating them like people and being nice to them, because it was almost portrayed as though he didn't know what he was delivering the first time around. Later, he knew straight up what it was, but it was like they wanted us to believe that he actually didn't know what he was currying, that he didn't want to know. And so he kind of just made the assumption that these guys weren't really the killers that we knew they were. But then later in the movie kind of dispels that, because Clint Eastwood's character is very aware of exactly what he's doing later in the movie, and yet he still treats them like his buddies. So I kind of agree and disagree with that interpretation on that review. It's like everything else in this movie. It's so all over the place that I don't know what to think exactly. I don't know if that was the point. Somehow I'm doubting that was the point. I think it's more along the lines of Clint Eastwood. His mind isn't like on the straight and narrow anymore, to put it very nicely. 3 stars, September 28, 2019. The Mule is another film to add to the long list of films by master filmmaker Clint Eastwood. Unfortunately, like some of his most recent work, it is a minor piece of cinema. It is clunky and heavy-handed. The story of Earl Stone is that a man struggling in modern times. Eastwood plays Earl with his usual grizzled charm, but the film strains to make its point and falls flat in the end. The point, I guess, is that the world ain't what it used to be, but the situation of a clean skin who suddenly starts being a drug mule. Yeah, I don't think that's the theme. I disagree with this reviewer. I don't think that was it at all. I think the theme that was tried to that the movie set out to deliver was that your family is more important than everybody else. The drug mule stuff was the vehicle to get there, but it failed and it wandered all over the place. So I don't agree that there was any message about the world isn't the way it used to be. No, 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 no. That's a red herring. This was definitely a movie about family being the most important. Unfortunately, it just didn't deliver what it promised it would. 3 stars, a flawed yet enjoyable late period Eastwood entry. You're being too kind. It's not up to Clint Eastwood's levels at all. It really isn't. 3 stars, September 19. Cards on the Table. I watched this film because John Mulaney did a comedy bit about it on SNL, where he described it as a superhero film for old people about a 90-year-old man whose superpower is that he is able to drive unsupervised. I watched it expecting to find it as odd as John Mulaney's description. A bizarre film that I could... something on a plane journey. And then I kind of liked it. Yes, it has the simplicity and stilted on-the-nose dialogue that all recent Clint Eastwood films seem to have. So they're saying they largely enjoyed it. But it was more like something that you would watch on a plane because you're a captive audience. I could kind of agree with that. I think it's just a message movie. Clint Eastwood set about to make a message movie about family, and somewhere along the way he got diverted, lost track of what was going on, and there was no one there to pick up the pieces for him. And it might be more of a statement on Clint Eastwood, not intentional on his part, but he may have actually told us with this film that his best days are behind him and that he's no longer the focused film director that he once was. And that's what I'm taking away. Now, as to my decision on whether I think this should be rotten, I'm going to say this doesn't quite deserve to be rotten. I think it deserves just barely a 60% on the audience score. 70% is too high. 66% is too high. I sat through it. I still think it's worth 2 stars. I give it 60% on the audience score if I had anything to say about it. And so not a total waste. Watch this if you have nothing else to do, and try to decide for yourself. Make it a game. Is this a statement on Eastwood and his mental abilities, or is this some other hidden thing that you were supposed to find? And you can leave that up to your own interpretation. Make a game out of it, and I will see you on the next episode of Rotten Reviews.